We're all busy. We all have a lot on our plate. We all are juggling 100 balls in the air at one time. Um, and it's understandable when you reach out to somebody and you don't hear back from them, and maybe you don't hear back from them from a day or two, but you eventually hear back from them. And that's understandable, because back in the old days when I was, first starting out in business, and particularly back east, it was really bad. I was, an East Coast person. If somebody said, I'll call you right back, that usually meant in less than an hour, an hour at most. When I got out here, I had to realize that I'll call you right back could be anytime. And that's fine. Tomorrow is good enough for me as well. However, what is not good is when you never hear back from somebody. You reach out multiple times, you never hear back. And that's never a really good feeling. And so today, let's consider this. What do you do? What happens when a consumer ghosts you? All right, we'll get into it after this. Welcome back. I'm E.H. Howard, and this is Consider This. And Consider This is where we look at moral and ethical issues that face small home and solopreneur businesses. We throw out some ideas and solutions on how those might resolve themselves, give you some information and feedback and some input to how you might address those issues in your business. Now, there are no wrong answers, there are no right answers. Your answer is specific and unique to you. Only you know your business. Only you have your background and experience. Only you know what works for you and what doesn't. So your answer cannot be. In other words, what I'm saying is it's not one size fits all. We're not going to come up with one solution that everybody can use. We're going to throw out ideas that you can take bits and pieces from, and hopefully figure out a solution that works for you. All right, so today's Consider This is, and this happens a lot more than I'd like to admit it. It happened a lot when I was running the design office. It seemed to be a consistent problem for a lot of people. And we'll talk about some of the reasons why, but let's get into the problem right here. Okay. You're approached by a consumer and they want to start a project with you, all right? And in order to make that project flow, you're going to need to get other things. You're going to buy supplies, you can line up other vendors, all of this kind of stuff. You send them a bid and you tell them that the bid is good for 90 days, all right? And you don't hear back. 1 week later, you don't hear back. 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, a month later, month and a half. And in all of this time, you are constantly, not harassing, but you'll drop them an email here, a phone call there. You are in consistent touch with them because the people that you booked are asking you, okay? Now, the 90 days have passed, it's about 6 months later, and now this consumer comes back to you and says, hey, we're ready to pull the trigger on that project that we had started. We'd had some budgeting issues, we've resolved it, now we're ready to go. And you're like, great, but things have changed slightly. All right, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but what would you do? What would you do if someone came back to you and said, hey, that project that we bid on 6 months ago, we're ready to go with it, all right? Before you answer, consider this though, okay? Now, you've been in constant contact with them. You have been reaching out to them on a somewhat regular basis, and haven't heard back from them. And frankly, that's a little unprofessional. It's not a little unprofessional. That is the definition of unprofessional. The least they could have given you is a heads up at some point. Like, hey man, we're having some issues with accounting and budgeting. We're trying to find, whatever it is. Keep me in the loop so I can keep the people behind me in the loop. All right. Now, that's one aspect of it. But number two, or what the options that are presented in front of us, or at least as I see it, and maybe you've been in this experience and you have a different option or opinion for this than I do, and please leave it in the comments below. I want to hear it. Option number one is you stand your ground, all right? And you say, hey, look, the bid was for 90 days. I don't know if I can do it at the prices that I bid 6 months ago, because as any business owner knows, particularly nowadays, prices fluctuate not only monthly, weekly, but daily. And so because of supply chain issues, I don't necessarily know if I can still get the stuff that I could get 6 months ago at that price. All right. So you got to kind of stand your ground and say, no, the bid was good for 90 days. I can't do it at that price anymore. Maybe you can't even do the project because now you've picked up other projects, and this is just going to really just kind of overwhelm you. If you do that, if that's the route you go, you have three potential options. They'll give in and go for the bigger price. Probably not what's going to happen. Mainly because if they've been fighting with accounting to get to this point in the budgeting, they're not willing to go back to accounting and get more money. Okay, like that's just not going to happen. So you have a couple of options there. You could lose them as a consumer. You could say, hey, I just can't do it, and they're like, fine, we're going to find somebody else. Now the challenge with that is you kind of have all the power. If we're being honest, because then they have to go through the bidding process again. They have to call other vendors. They have to find that, and then they have to go, and they still have to go back to accounting and explain, okay, we have a new vendor at this price. Okay. So, everything is a ripple effect. Okay. Everything is a ripple effect. You may end up having a fight with them. They may get really pissed off. And even though you may end up winning and keeping the price, it could be a very nasty relationship. Okay. We'll talk more about things that I've dealt with and how I've dealt with it over on Patreon. But that is a very real possibility. Okay. You give in and you're like, fine, I can do it at the 6 months price that I quoted you, the price I quoted you 6 months ago, which is a much better way of saying it. What does the ripple effect from that? What happens there? And that's a very good question, because then you get, you got to call all the people behind you that were giving you supplies and materials and helping you out, doing outsourcing and those kinds of things, and asking them, can you still do it at the price that you quoted me 6 months ago? Maybe they can. Maybe they can't. Maybe they can't. Maybe they can't take the project on it. Maybe it's like you had to get something fabricated, and now because of whatever reason, the fabrication studio is overwhelmed with work and they can do it, but they can't now do it on the timeline that you want. There's a lot of other variables in here. The challenge with that is you're asking your partners to take a loss. You're going to take a loss. The only person who comes out, roses in all of this is the main business, and you've already set a precedent. So now, what happens next time when they call up and they're like, well, get a bid, you don't hear from them for 8 months, and now they see what I'm saying is I'm a big person of drawing a line in the sand and sticking to it, because I don't want precedent. I don't want to be fighting with people on precedent. And again, I don't think and this does not apply to superfans. Superfans would never be in this situation with you. It's mostly casual consumers and problem children. The other option 3 in all of this is 3 that was not, so that was very unclear, the image. Option 3 is you tell them you're going to meet in the middle. Okay. I said I could do it for $1,000. It's now 6 months later. It's going to be $2,000. I'll take a $500 loss if you pony up for $500. See if they'll meet in the middle. That's an option too. Is hey, look, and it's sort of the combination. Look, the bid was only good for 90 days. It clearly states on the bottom of every page the bid is only good for 90 days. I told you that I had to get outsourcing and all that. Like I couldn't. It wasn't all coming from my stock. I had to get other stock. Those prices went up. You can explain all the factual reasons you need more money, and just say to them, look, hey, I'm willing to meet you halfway. The other thing that I would do, and we'll talk more about this on Patreon, but this is a huge thing for everybody, is keep a phone log. All right, if it's on the front of the file, if it's on a piece of paper in the file, whatever. I called you on January 10th at 10:05 a.m. I spoke to your assistant, Beth. Beth said you were out of the office to call back tomorrow. I called back on, and keep a phone log so that you can even say to them, keep an email trail. Hey, I reached out to you on these dates and these times. Before the bid went invalid, I sent you, an email saying, hey, there's 48 hours left before the bid, dissolves. What do you want to do? Help me. I would keep that information because that supports and hey, look, I've been trying to keep in touch with you. If you had called me at any one of these points, I could have called them. Hey, look, this is what's going on. Let me pass it on to my vendors and outsourcing. But that's a big thing. I would keep a phone log. But what would you do? What would you? Is there another option that I have not considered? And there possibly is. You never know. So leave your comments below. I'd like to hear what you have to say. How you have, I want to hear all about it. Bop on over to Patreon where we'll talk about some assessment issues. We'll go a little bit deeper into some of the options. I'll tell you what I would do in that situation that can kind of hopefully give you some insight into things. Other than that, while you're here, if you like this content, like and subscribe below. Pop on over while you're here and watch the Small Business Talk Show. Spend a few moments with E.H. Howard over there on the E.H. Howard playlist. Bop on over to Vimeo for 60 seconds with me, and that's where we talk about little things like, what is the talking point? What is the selling point? Why, what, all the sort of little basic things that we all need to know and be reminded of sometimes in a brief, short little burst. Short enough that you can read it on the toilet or listen to them on the toilet. Bop on over to Facebook, join me there. We're doing the 2-minute challenge with some blue sky creative thinking things like imagine your perfect day and all those kinds of things. Yeah, because sometimes we got to have some fun. It's not all about, deep learning and moral and ethical issues. All right, so hopefully I will see you over on Patreon for part 2 of this. If not, I will see you in the next Consider This video. And I'd love to hear below everything that you think, what you would do in this situation and how you would handle it. All right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate you and have a great day. Bye.